Hey everyone, I'm Mine, and as many of you probably already know, today is the 10th anniversary of Ninjago. I've been watching Ninjago since it originally came out, January 14th, 2011. I was 9 years old at the time, and it's super cool to see that it's still around 10 years later. To celebrate 10 years of Ninjago, along with releasing, like, the Ninjago City Gardens, which I do have a review of up, if you guys want to go check that out, click the link in the top right corner. They also released a press release that contains a lot of cool stuff, some concept art from the show, some prototypes for the sets, so I thought it'd be fun to look through and just, like, give my thoughts on all these, because I've never seen these before. I think it's really cool that they released this. So I think it's just really fascinating to look at how, like, a set's design can change over time. So first, we have Cole's Tread Assault right here from 2012. This is really fascinating, the changes that went through. Originally, it was like this tan vehicle. I'm not sure if that was even a ninja vehicle at that point. That looks to be more of a snake color scheme, but even that doesn't fit exactly, so I'm not sure if maybe this wasn't even a Ninjago set at this point. I'm not sure. But you could see, like, elements of the actual Tread Assault there, especially in, like, the cockpit, but that's very interesting. And then it became red. I really like the gold trim on this one. I think this is quite cool. I guess this would have been a Kai vehicle at this point, which is interesting. And then finally it became the Tread Assault that we know and love. Be really cool if they remade this for Legacy. Please, LEGO. Yeah, that's fascinating, like, how drastic this changed. Next, we have the different versions of the original Zane snowmobile. These are pretty interesting to look at. It looks like they're out of order because I believe this one right here is the final version, if I remember correctly. It's a shame they got rid of these, like, printed, like, white rocks in the ice. I think that would have looked cool. Yeah, you can see all the transformations this went through. Like, the original is quite bad, actually. And I don't know what that ninja figure sitting on top is with, like, a suit and tie. That's pretty funny looking. But yeah, it's really cool to see how this changed over time. And there was, like, lightning coming out the back at one point. Honestly, the final version of this set isn't great. But, yeah, it's cool to see how it, like, evolved and changed. Next, here's the evolution of the Great Devourer from the Epic Dragon Battle set back in 2012. This is really cool. That original looks nothing like the final version, but I think he's got a really funny look to him. He's got a huge chin, and I like how he uses an actual snake to be his tongue. But yeah, he looks more like a mock than an actual set. I do like this middle one right here. I think it would have been worse for play, because you can't actually put a figure in his mouth, but this might be the best looking one in the middle. I think that one looks the most like it does in the show. And then the final one isn't great, but I do like him, because I had a lot of fun with him as a kid. Next, we have the X1 Ninja Charger from 2014. This is the original version, not the Legacy version. This is fascinating. There's so many different things here. So, originally it was like a three-person car, which this is also quite ugly. Obviously, I think it would have been refined from this, but that's quite interesting. That would have been cool to see. Then it had like this huge wheel at the back. This one looks quite similar to the Legacy version that came out this year, with this like sleeker design. And then I guess it was 3 bikes at one point. This looks very similar to the Kai's vehicle for season 11, which is kind of interesting. And then it has like this more like stronger race car design. Then I think this, I don't think this is the final version, but it's very similar to it. Yeah, here's what the final version looks like, and you can see how it changed over time. That's really fascinating, how many different changes that went through. That's really cool to see. Next, here's a prototype for the original Boulder Blaster. This is fascinating because a lot of the prototypes feel like 90s Lego sets, if that makes any sense. Like, they're very simplistic. Interestingly, there is no blaster on this version of the Boulder Blaster, and that's like an archaic, windscreen. I haven't seen that in years. And what, those are like the Bionicle minifigure legs, or the Hero Factory minifigure legs? Lots of, like, fascinating parts usage here. But yeah, this is clearly very different from the final version. Which, if you want a reminder what the final version looks like, here's what the, final set ended up being. And then in terms of sets, the last one they provided was this prototype version of Zane's Titan mech. I believe this is the original version, not the, Legacy remake. This is fascinating. This actually has knees, which, again, like, I talk about this a lot, but mechs don't usually have knees, and I don't believe the final version of the 2015 one did, so that's kind of fascinating. They also use the Technic joints in Trans Blue here, which is really fascinating. Trans Blue and white. I haven't seen that color combination for them before. A really elaborate, huge shield right here. I think that's good that they got rid of that, and the fingers are quite ugly on this one. Looks like they're meant to be like mittens, which I guess is kind of fascinating, but yeah, this guy's a little chunky. I like the final design more, but it's really fascinating to see how he changed. Oh, and in terms of final product, they actually gave pictures of the new one, so I guess that was a prototype for the new version of the Titan mech, not the old version, so that's interesting. So that's it in terms of sets, but they also provide some prototypes for some individual parts. Here's like the prototypes that came into question when designing the original like rubber dragon heads. Here's some prototypes for, I guess, hats and ninja masks and everything. These are quite similar to what the movie Ninja Masks ended up being, so that's cool to see how those changed. And there's a like giant armor piece right here, which is fascinating. There's also this like differently shaped straw hat that's a little like rounder. This is quite similar to the one they're ending up using on Raya from that upcoming Disney movie. So that's kind of cool to see them like actually use that. And it looks like they designed these on like bigger minifigures first, and then they like translate into a smaller form, which is kind of cool. Here are the prototypes for the Skulkin heads. These are quite cool. So yeah, I guess these are what the final versions ended up being. They tried to make a brick built one, it looks like, and yeah, there's the final versions down there. This is quite similar to one of the characters from Space Police, I think, this head right here, so I think they were trying to translate that into skeleton, but they just decided to completely redo it. And this one right here, while not exactly the same, this is quite similar to what they ended up doing with Legacy, which is pretty interesting. Here's some prototype snakes. These guys are spooky. They have like literal lizard heads. These are really, really fascinating to look at. I think it's good they didn't go with those. They're a little too detailed. They don't feel very Lego-like. Here is Lazaru. I guess originally, I guess they were considered like Chima style like head attachments for these two, but then they decided to just do a fully molded head right here. And then here's Fangdam, and I guess they were trying to figure out different ways to have the two heads. I like this one right here. This one with the two stacked on top of each other doesn't look very good. I'm glad they didn't do that, but I think the final version of this guy did look really good. It was like incorporated like super smoothly. I love how he looks. And then Pythor, look at that. Pythor originally had a closed mouth. Could you imagine that? All these years we could have had closed mouth Pythor. Wow. And they decided to go with this, and we're still getting this to this day. That's fascinating to see and really disappointing, actually. I don't mind open mouth Pythor, but the fact that they had a really good looking closed mouth Pythor and decided against it is really disappointing. And here's some more. Here is Baitar. He looked to be pretty much the same throughout all three. It looks like he had tongue sticking out right here. Spitter right here is quite interesting. This version just looks a lot thinner. He looks more like an alien than a snake. I think this was the right decision right here. Ratla had like a face covering sort of like the Chima characters before. That's pretty interesting to see. And then it had like this little area coming down, but they decided to just come up with like a simpler crest. And I think the final Ratla does look good. And then Scales, look at that first version. That reminds me of the, like, Mantis character from LEGO Atlantis. That's pretty cool. And then they tried to do armor with him, and then they decided to just do a head. That's really cool to see. Wow, it's cool to see how all these evolved. But that's about it in terms of set prototypes. Now let's take a look at some of the show concepts they provided. So they organized these by years. This is from 2009, so 2 years before Ninjago was officially released. This is the first ever drawing of Spinjitzu by Tommy Andreasen. You can see there's 5 ninja here, Wu in the middle. Originally it was called Spinjago, which is interesting. Really cool drawing. You can see Tommy's style right here, and that's so cool to think that like 2 years before Ninjago came out, like they were already doing this stuff. Here's some concept art for some of the skeletons. You can see Garmadon originally had like this bone armor right here. Sabokai is quite similar to the final version. These guys have different names, but you can see like actual skeletons in all of these. There's Funny Bone ended up being Crazy. That's obviously good. Ended up being Knuckle. This ended up being Cruncha. And then you had Sabokai and obviously Lord Garmadon. He took like a very different turn in his final version. This is a piece of art by Craig Stellers that he designed after they came up with a concept for Ninjago. This is really pretty. Like this would be a really nice like desktop wallpaper. I love how this looks. It's so cool to see like these little concepts like turn into something so big. Next we'll move on to 2012. Here's the first ever drawing of Lloyd. So before the Ninjago pilots even aired in 2011, they were already coming up with season 1 of the show with Lloyd and everything. He looks really funny. That captures season 1 Lloyd's personality really well. This is a drawing made to sum up the concepts of the first 2 Ninjago seasons. You can see snakes right here. You have a ninja holding out nunchucks. I believe that's probably supposed to be the green ninja, but I can't be for sure because obviously it's uncolored. Really, really cool look. This is a drawing made to present Rise of the Snakes to LEGO, which obviously succeeded because the Rise of the Snakes was the first season of the show. This looks super cool. I love this. Here's another drawing where one of the snakes is controlling one of the ninja. Here's concept art for Samurai Nia. That's pretty cool. Yeah, and they talk about how you can hint the fact that it's Nia with the eyes, the fire, the tassels, and the color. That's really cool. And there's a colored drawing of Samurai Nia. Super, super cool. There's nothing new in terms of like art from 2011. It's just showing like the best song sets of the year, which I don't think is that interesting. But going into 2012, they have some more concept art for the snakes, and I found this really interesting. Back in 2012, they had a concept for this character, Scorch, which is a lava snake. So it's cool to see they actually reused this idea back in season 11, finally, with the lava snakes. Obviously, there never ended up being a lava snake tribe, but they brought this back with the Pyro Vipers. That's super cool to see that, like, they reused an old concept, and it worked really well. Here's an older drawing of Scales, too, with the snake staff, and I guess that's Slither in the background. This file is just titled Overlord, so I guess the Overlord might have been meant to possess Lloyd or something at this point, which is kind of interesting. This is concept for 2013. You can see he's got like dark hair and this huge cape behind him, and like they're all floating in the air, so that's kind of interesting to think about. This is in the 2014 folder for some reason. I'm not sure why. This is not from 2014. This is clearly concept from March of the Oni, but you can see this drawing of Lloyd meeting the first Ninjutsu Master, which is really cool. Here's something really interesting. Here's some concept arts for some of the Elemental Masters. This looks like it might have been a Master of Water, possibly, which is interesting because Neo wasn't always planned to be the Master of Water, so that's kind of cool to see that there might have been a different one. Next, this is clearly Jacob with a guitar string and with the glasses and everything. This is really cute. I prefer his final design with the afro and everything, but I really like this guy. Tommy Andreessen has showed this on Twitter before. This is Skylar. Obviously, she went through some changes in the final version, but it's cool to see what the first concept looked like here. This guy is interesting. What's he? He's got like needles and everything. This might be Belobo, maybe, like nature with needle, yeah, like grass arms with needles on him. He's really fascinating, though. I like him a lot. Here's a Master of Time, which is interesting. Obviously, this was cut out of Tournament of Elements and put into Hands of Time, but it's cool to see this for, like, first original drawing. He's got a clock and everything. I think some of these elements are reused for Griffin Turner, but, yeah, it's cool to see that the Master of Time was a concept even back then. And then this, I guess, would be Gravis, the Master of Gravity. That hair is awesome. I would have loved it that was his hair, but obviously you can't really get that into an actual LEGO figure, but that is really, really cool. Next, we move on to Skybound. Here's a piece of concept art for Cole's Dragon. This is super cool, super stylistic. It looks a lot better than the set looks, which is interesting. But this is an interesting look at some of the early Skybound suits, too. Very fascinating. Kind of reminds me of the Master of the Mountain suits a little bit. Moving on to 2017, here's a sketch of the Vermillion Warriors, like an original concept. These are called the Scale Warriors at the time, which is interesting, and you can see it's fairly similar to the final design, except they're green instead of red. I actually really like the green, though. The Vermillion pun is really good, so I think it's cool that they went with the red. And then moving on to 2018, we have a ton of different sketches. We have just the sketch of a ninja right here, a sketch of Master Wu, like, walking down a path, which is really cool. I think this is a drawing to, like, pitch Garmadon's return right here. You can see he has a red belt instead of blue. He looks quite awesome here. There's a look at Jay, Kai, Lloyd, Cole, Misako, interestingly, Nia, Pixel, Skylar. Wow, I like that. I love that look for Skylar. That's super cool. Ultraviolet. I guess this is one of the original concepts for Ultraviolet. Master Will. Zane with the Falcon. Whoa, this is an awesome picture. Zane with the Falcon with the shurikens and everything. And he's in his SOG suit. That's super cool. Here's another drawing of Garmadon right here. There's Kai doing Spinjitzu. Here's some concept art for the Oni masks, how they were going to make it connect to the biker helmets. That's really creative. And I guess they were like debating on the idea of whether or not to have the horns attachable or not. Here's some concept art of the redesign of Wu in 2019, which is cool. Here's concept art for Akita. I like this design for her right here with the white face and like no hat, just the ears. I think that looks quite cool. But yeah, these two are really fascinating to see how she changed. Here's concept art for Fire Fang, the best LEGO set of all time, and Aspheris. Super cool. And here's just some concept art for Ice Chapter. This looks amazing. Like, it's so cool to see how all this is stylized. I wonder if this right here, this like wolf creature, was a canceled set, because you can see actual Lego bricks on it. So this is really fascinating, and it looks awesome. You can see Akita standing on the mech right there. Wow, this looks amazing. And then finally, I already showed this in another video today, but here is the official poster for Season 14. But that's about all they included in the document. Obviously, I would have preferred a little bit more. I wish we got something for every season, but we got a lot of really cool stuff. And it's so cool to see, like, the inner workings of how Ninjago was created. I think that's about going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed, please press like and subscribe if you're new. I do LEGO and Ninjago videos like this every single day, so if you subscribe, you'll be the first to see them. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.